Rain had been falling steadily since early morning, leaving the narrow streets of the city slick with reflections of neon signs and the occasional flickering street lamp. In the shadow of towering apartment buildings and bustling cafes, a small figure moved cautiously through puddles, her thin jacket soaked through, hood pulled low to hide her face. She was a beggar, not by choice but by circumstances that had carved a path of misfortune into her life. Her name was Lena, a girl of about 12, with eyes too old for her age, eyes that had seen too much yet still clung desperately to hope. Lena's mornings were predictable. Wake up under the bridge near the old tram depot, find whatever scraps she could for breakfast, and make her way to the city center where the crowd was thickest. Today, however, was different. There was an unusual hum of activity in the streets. Delivery vans whizzed past, some flashing official logos, others anonymous but suspiciously well-maintained. And then she saw him, a man stepping out of a black Mercedes van parked near the train station. He wore a tailored suit, his posture rigid, almost military, and his hair slicked back as though every strand had been aligned by command. But what made Lena stop mid-step wasn't his appearance, it was his voice. She crouched behind a newspaper stand, eyes barely peeking out. The man was talking into his phone, his words sharp, precise. Lena had heard many languages in the city, French from tourists, English from exchange students, occasional Russian from the market traders, but today, she recognized something else entirely. Ja, das Paket muss genau hut Jellyfurt worden, the man said. His German was fluent, crisp, almost cold. Und niemand darf wissen, dass es unterwegs ist. Lena's heart skipped a beat. German. Not a language she expected to hear in this part of the city, not in such a clandestine tone. Her mother had spoken bits of German when she was younger, fragments from a time before tragedy had swallowed their family whole. Lena had remembered a few phrases, enough to know that the man's words were secretive, and judging by the tension in his voice, something dangerous. The girl's curiosity wasn't just idle, survival had trained her to notice details that others overlooked. She had learned that in the cracks of people's behaviors, in the smallest gestures, the truth often revealed itself. She watched as the man adjusted a strap on a large black case, his eyes scanning the street nervously. Lena knew instinctively that whatever was in that case wasn't ordinary cargo. She had seen enough in the streets to know when to be cautious. Many times she had witnessed petty thieves, con artists, or desperate workers, but this man radiated something different. Authority. Fear. And secrecy. Lena crept closer, keeping low behind a parked bicycle, careful to remain unseen. The rain muffled the soft slap of her worn shoes against the wet pavement. A thought crossed her mind, should she run? Could this be dangerous? But Lena was no stranger to danger, the streets had taught her that bravery wasn't the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it. The man's voice, now lower, almost a whisper, reached her again. Die Übertragung muss hut Nacht abgeschlossen sein. Kein Feller, sonst, his sentence trailed off, but the implication was clear. Mistakes had consequences, and serious ones. Lena's pulse quickened. Something about his tone, the way he kept glancing over his shoulder, suggested that he was involved in something illicit, something that could harm people if left unchecked. Her instincts screamed at her, "Pay attention, Lena. This could be your chance to make a difference, maybe even to step beyond the life that had boxed you into invisibility." The girl had a reputation among the street children, not for theft or mischief, but for keen observation, for noticing what adults thought was unnoticeable. People often overlooked her because of her small stature, her unassuming presence, and her tattered clothes. But that invisibility was her greatest weapon. The man paused, opened the case, and started arranging objects inside. Lena squinted, trying to make out shapes under the dim streetlight. There were small boxes, neatly packed, and a stack of papers that looked official. She had seen similar things in offices, documents that carried information, instructions, authorizations. She didn't understand everything, but she could sense the weight of importance in each item he handled. Her stomach tightened. She knew she had to act, but how? How could a beggar girl, 12 years old and alone in the city, influence something controlled by an adult man with power and secrecy? The odds were against her, yet a stubborn flame of courage flickered within her. She had survived this long because she had learned to act when others hesitated. The man's phone buzzed. He spoke again in German, sharper this time, almost impatient. Wir haben keine Zeit zu verlieren. Jetter feller Word folgen haben. No time to waste. Every mistake will have consequences. Lena shivered. Consequences. She had seen them before, though in smaller scales, the backlash of decisions that seemed trivial at first, spiraling into chaos. And then, suddenly, he paused, looked around, and stuffed the case back into the van. He spoke one last sentence into his phone before closing the door. Alles wird nach Plan laufen. Kein Problem. Everything will go according to plan. No problem. Lena realized the window was closing. If she wanted to do something, now was the time. Her mind raced. She had no weapon, no backup, only her wits and agility. But maybe that was enough. The streets had trained her for moments like this, when ordinary circumstances demanded extraordinary decisions. She crouched lower, moving silently toward the van. Her small hands gripped the cold metal, feeling the vibrations of the engine. She knew that touching the wrong part could alert the driver, could give her away. Her heart pounded, but her mind remained sharp. Observing, listening, calculating, this was her world. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the street. The man inside the van looked momentarily startled, glancing around as if sensing something was off. Lena froze. Then she remembered a trick her father had taught her years ago, before he disappeared into circumstances she would never fully understand. Invisibility is not about being unseen, it is about being unremarkable. Lena adjusted her posture, let herself slump as if she were just another homeless child seeking shelter from the rain. She pressed her face into the hood of her jacket, pretending to shiver. The man muttered under his breath in German again, ignoring the figure on the street. Lena exhaled slowly. Step 1 had worked, she was unnoticed, for now. Now came step 2, action. She had seen the briefcase, heard the words, understood enough to know that whatever was happening could hurt people, and maybe, if she acted quickly, she could prevent it. The girl's fingers brushed against the door handle of the van. A surge of determination coursed through her. She would not let fear dictate her choice. Not today. In that moment, Lena, the beggar girl, realized that sometimes the smallest among us have the power to disrupt plans that giants of secrecy take for granted. The rain continued to fall, drumming a steady rhythm on the asphalt, and in that rhythm, Lena found courage. One breath. One step. One incredible choice. Lena crouched in the shadows beside the Mercedes van, her small frame pressing against the cold wet curb. Her pulse was loud in her ears, mixing with the constant drumming of rain. The man inside, his voice still sharp and measured, continued speaking in German on the phone. Lena didn't understand every word, but enough to sense the urgency and secrecy of his mission. Whatever was in that briefcase was important, dangerous, and now in her hands, the possibility of something incredible rested solely on her choices. Her fingers tightened around the metal handle. She reminded herself, quick, silent, decisive. The streets had taught her well. Every day was a lesson in observation and timing, in reading human behavior and acting before the opportunity vanished. The van's engine idled, a low rumble beneath the rain. The man bent down, adjusting straps and inspecting the case as if it were a sacred relic. Lena saw her chance. She slipped her hand under the slightly open door, inching toward the latch, careful to remain unnoticed. She felt the weight of the situation. This was no petty theft or playful mischief. If she failed, the consequences could be severe. But if she succeeded, maybe she could prevent harm. Just as her fingers brushed the latch, the man muttered under his breath and stepped away, leaving the door slightly ajar. Lena froze. Her instincts screamed, move now or lose the chance. Taking a deep breath, she pulled the door open quietly and leaned inside. The case rested on the seat, untouched, almost inviting. She glanced around, heart pounding, making sure no one saw her. Lifting the briefcase required careful balance. It was heavier than she expected. Lena's arms strained, but she adjusted her grip and held it close, pressing it against her chest. A metallic clink from one of the latches echoed slightly in the confined space. She froze, waiting for any sign of detection. Nothing. The man was still bent over, unaware. Now came the trickiest part, escape. Lena knew that exiting the van the same way she had entered would be obvious. She had to be quick, precise, and unnoticeable. She lowered herself toward the curb, balancing carefully, and stepped into the shadows of a narrow alley beside the van. She didn't run, running would draw attention. Instead, she moved with calculated speed, blending with the shapes of crates and dumpsters. Once she reached the end of the alley, Lena allowed herself a moment to breathe. The rain had soaked through her jacket, but adrenaline kept her warm. She opened the briefcase just enough to peek inside. Papers, files, and a few small boxes, nothing she fully understood, but the weight of knowledge pressed on her. Whoever this man was, the information in that case could hurt many people if it reached the wrong hands. Lena tucked the case under her arm and moved toward the nearby train station. She had to think fast. Where could she hide this until she could figure out what to do? Her mind raced through familiar places, the abandoned locker behind the market, the hollow space beneath the bridge, the hidden compartment in the derelict warehouse where she sometimes slept. All risky, but necessary. As she rounded a corner, a sudden movement caught her eye. Another man, wearing a dark raincoat, was approaching the alley. Lena froze. Was he part of the same operation? She pressed herself against the wall, letting the shadows swallow her. The man paused, looking around, then continued past without noticing her. Lena exhaled slowly, thankful. Each encounter with danger sharpened her resolve. She reached the train station, where the hum of fluorescent lights and the chatter of early commuters provided cover. Lena found a quiet corner near a stairwell, setting the briefcase down carefully. She opened it just enough to peek inside again. The papers were marked with stamps, codes, and official seals. Boxes contained small devices that looked complex, possibly electronic. She didn't need to understand the technicalities, just knowing that these items were important was enough. A plan began to form in her mind. Lena had always been clever, but this situation required more than cleverness. It required courage and decisive action. She couldn't simply take the briefcase and disappear. Someone would notice, and worse, the information could still reach the wrong hands. She needed a safe place and a trustworthy adult, someone who could understand the gravity of the situation. Her thoughts turned to Frau Müller, a retired teacher who occasionally gave her scraps of food and offered advice. Frau Müller had a reputation for discretion and wisdom, and she had often spoken of moral courage and standing up when no one else would. Lena knew it was a risk, but she had no other choice. She needed help. Clutching the briefcase, Lena navigated the rain-slick streets toward Frau Müller's apartment. Each step felt heavy, yet determined. The city seemed different now. The familiar streets, once indifferent, now seemed alive with secrets and dangers she had never noticed. She ducked into alleys, avoided street cameras, and moved silently, relying on instincts honed from years of surviving the harsh streets. Finally, she reached Frau Müller's door, hesitating briefly before knocking softly. The elderly woman opened the door, surprised to see Lena soaked to the bone and holding a heavy case. "Lena, child. What's happened?" Frau Müller asked, concern etched into her face. Lena didn't waste time with small talk. "Someone is planning something dangerous," Lena said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. I overheard it. German. Papers, devices, it's in this case. We have to stop it. Frau Muller's eyes widened. She motioned Lena inside quickly, closing the door behind them. Sit down, tell me everything. Every detail. For the next hour, Lena recounted everything, the man speaking German, the urgency in his voice, the briefcase, the small boxes, the papers, and the risk. Frau Muller listened intently, nodding occasionally, her face grave. This is serious, Frau Muller said finally, after Lena finished. And you, Lena, have done something incredible. Most children would have ignored it, or been too afraid. But you, she paused, searching for the right words. You acted when it mattered. You showed courage, intelligence, and heart. Now we must decide how to protect this and get help without putting you in danger. Lena felt a mix of pride and fear. Pride that she had acted, fear of the consequences if she failed. Frau Muller retrieved her old rotary phone, making careful calls, ensuring that the right people were informed, authorities she trusted, contacts who could respond quickly without alerting the dangerous man Lena had seen. As night fell, Lena realized the enormity of what she had done. She, a beggar girl unnoticed by most, had intervened in a plot that could have harmed countless people. The thrill of accomplishment mixed with the tension of knowing that the danger wasn't over. Frau Muller placed a comforting hand on Lena's shoulder. Rest for now, child. Tomorrow, we act. Together, we will make sure this threat is stopped. And you must remember, bravery is not about recklessness, it's about acting wisely, even when scared. Lena nodded, clutching the briefcase close. She had stepped beyond the margins of her life, into a world of secrets, danger, and incredible responsibility. The city outside hummed on, unaware that in a small apartment, a girl who had once begged for scraps of food had just begun a chain of events that might change everything. In that moment, Lena understood something profound: courage wasn't reserved for the powerful or wealthy. Sometimes, it was the invisible, the overlooked, the underestimated who held the power to change the course of events. And tonight, she had done just that. Morning light filtered weakly through the cracked blinds of Frau Muller's apartment, casting muted stripes across the small living room where Lena sat cross-legged, the briefcase resting on her knees. The rain had stopped, leaving a chill in the air, but Lena barely noticed. Her mind was alive with the possibilities, and dangers, contained within the papers and devices she had taken. Frau Muller paced the room, phone in hand, speaking in hushed tones with the trusted contacts she had called the night before. Lena listened carefully, catching fragments of words like surveillance, immediate response, and containment protocols. She didn't understand all the technicalities, but she understood the urgency. Every second counted. Finally, Frau Muller hung up and turned toward Lena. They're on their way, Lena. Special task force. Discreet, precise, experienced. They'll handle the immediate threat. But your role, it's just beginning. We need to understand what this briefcase contains, what these devices do, and how it all fits into the man's plan. Lena nodded, her determination solidifying. She carefully opened the case again, this time examining the contents with Frau Muller beside her. Documents were stamped with official seals, each marked with codes Lena didn't recognize. Small devices, sleek and metallic, blinked intermittently with lights she couldn't decipher. Yet she noticed patterns. Some papers referenced locations, schedules, even names of people she had overheard the man mention the night before. This is more than just some petty theft or corporate espionage, Lena said quietly. They're planning something big, coordinated, dangerous. Frau Muller's gaze was grave. Yes. And the fact that you intercepted it before it reached its destination means we may have a chance to stop it. But we must be careful. One wrong move could alert them. They'll be watching, expecting interference. The apartment door clicked softly, and Lena's heart jumped. A tall man in plain clothes entered, no uniforms, no badges, just calm efficiency. His eyes scanned the room, landing on Lena with measured interest. "Lena?" he asked, voice low and authoritative. "I'm Agent Beggar. Frau Muller called us last night. You did exactly the right thing by bringing this to a safe location. Now, we need your cooperation to neutralize the threat completely." Lena swallowed hard, aware that she was suddenly part of something far bigger than she had imagined. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, voice steady despite the adrenaline simmering inside her. Agent Beggar set the briefcase on the table, opening it carefully. "We need to catalog everything. Document the contents, photograph the devices, make copies of the papers. We'll analyze the electronics and cross-reference the files with intelligence networks. Your observations last night are crucial. Every detail you noticed, how the man behaved, the conversation fragments, even his gestures, can help us anticipate their next move." For hours, Lena worked under Becker's careful supervision, documenting and organizing. She noted the man's nervous fidgeting, the urgency of certain phrases, the unusual timing of communications. Each observation was recorded meticulously. She realized her survival skills on the street, watching, listening, anticipating danger, had prepared her for this moment. By mid-afternoon, the task force had enough preliminary information to start forming a plan. The danger, however, was far from over. Lena learned that the man she had followed, and the team he was connected to, had access to multiple locations in the city, secured facilities, and even loyal insiders. They were precise, ruthless, and highly intelligent. "This is a network, Lena," Agent Beggar explained. "Not just one man or one team. They operate like clockwork. Any disruption to their plan will make them unpredictable, which is where your knowledge comes in. You've already observed their routines, their behavior patterns. We need that insight to act before they realize we've intercepted the briefcase." Lena nodded, her determination sharpening. Fear lingered, but it no longer paralyzed her. She realized something essential: courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. She had already taken a step most adults would hesitate to take. Now, she had to continue, smarter and more deliberate. Beggar outlined the immediate next steps. They needed to track the communications between the man she had overheard speaking German and his network. For security reasons, they couldn't risk sending Lena into the field alone again, but her presence and observations would guide them. "That means I'll be helping from here?" Lena asked, trying to gauge the risk. "Not just from here," Beggar replied, a hint of a smile breaking his serious demeanor. "Your observations are like pieces of a puzzle we couldn't see without you. We'll be deploying teams to intercept their moves, but your insight, will guide them precisely where they need to be." Hours passed, and as night fell, Lena's apartment transformed into a strategic command hub. Maps, timelines, and intercepted communications were spread across the room. Lena and Frau Muller worked alongside Beggar and his team, plotting moves and anticipating reactions. It was exhausting work, yet Lena felt alive, engaged, and purposeful in a way she never had before. Suddenly, the phone rang sharply. Beggar answered, and his expression stiffened. "They've moved," he said quietly. "The target team has accessed a secure location downtown. Unscheduled. This wasn't in the original plan. Lena, can you recall any patterns from last night that might indicate where they're headed?" Lena's mind raced. She thought back to the van, the man's urgency, the fragments of conversation, the schedule on his desk. Something clicked. "The warehouse near the river," she said. "He mentioned deliveries. Boxes. Timing, every Thursday evening. That's tonight." Beggar's eyes narrowed. "Good. That's exactly the lead we need. We'll deploy a team immediately. You'll stay here with Frau Muller, safe, but keep observing. If anything changes, any behavior, any detail, you'll inform us." Lena nodded, her heart pounding. Even though she wasn't on the front lines this time, she felt the weight of responsibility. Every decision, every observation could determine the outcome. She realized she was no longer invisible in the world she had navigated alone. She had a role, and it mattered. As the hours dragged on, Lena noticed small, subtle patterns in the communications the team intercepted. A pause here, a hesitation there, an unusual timing of messages. She pointed them out to Beggar, who nodded approvingly. Her intuition, sharpened by years of survival, allowed her to notice details that trained agents sometimes overlooked. The hours became a blur of strategy, observation, and coordination. Finally, Beggar addressed Lena with quiet seriousness. "We're moving in tonight. Your observations will guide the entry points and timing. Stay calm, stay alert, and trust your instincts. You've already proven extraordinary courage. Tonight, we complete what you started." As night deepened, the city outside hummed with oblivious activity. Lena felt the weight of the briefcase and the knowledge it contained pressing against her chest. Her small hands tightened around the papers she had photographed, the devices she had catalogued. She wasn't just a beggar girl anymore, she was a critical part of a plan to stop a dangerous network, to protect countless people from harm. Hours later, under the cover of darkness, teams moved into position. Lena stayed in the apartment with Frau Muller, watching monitors and providing real-time insights. She noted the man's signature gestures, his sudden movements, and patterns in his communication. Beggar relayed her observations to the teams in the field. The operation unfolded with precision, but not without tense moments. Alarms, miscommunications, and split-second decisions tested everyone involved. Yet Lena remained focused, her mind sharp, her heart steady despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the teams reported success. The target network had been contained, key players apprehended, and the dangerous devices secured. Lena allowed herself a moment to breathe. Relief washed over her, but the adrenaline still coursed through her veins. She realized she had been part of something incredible, not just because of the outcome, but because of the courage she had summoned when it mattered most. Frau Muller embraced Lena tightly, pride and relief mingling in her expression. "You did it, Lena. You truly did it. You risked yourself to protect others. You've done something remarkable." Lena looked down at her small hands, still trembling slightly. I just did what I had to do," she whispered. "I didn't have a choice." Frau Muller smiled knowingly. "Ah, but that's exactly what makes courage real. It's not about choosing to be brave, it's about acting rightly when fear tries to hold you back." Later, as Lena lay in the small spare room Frau Muller had prepared for her, she reflected on the night's events. The city outside was calm now, oblivious to the dangers that had lurked beneath its streets, to the secret battle waged in shadows, and to the bravery of one small girl who had dared to act when everyone else hesitated. She realized something vital: courage didn't require strength or wealth. It didn't require fame or recognition. Sometimes, it came from the invisible, the overlooked, the underestimated. And sometimes, it could change everything. As dawn approached, Lena drifted into a rare, exhausted sleep. Outside, the city began to stir. Life continued, unaware of the incredible events that had unfolded, unaware of the girl who had acted when the world might have done nothing. But Lena knew the truth. She had made a difference. And for the first time in her life, she felt the quiet, undeniable power of being seen, not just for who she was, but for what she could do. The city had barely begun to stir when Lena awoke. Light filtered through the thin curtains of Frau Muller's apartment, the quiet hum of early morning traffic outside blending with her own lingering heartbeat. She had slept fitfully, dreams haunted by the images of the man she had followed, his sharp movements, the glint of the devices she had intercepted. Even in sleep, her mind had replayed every decision, every moment of that night. Frau Muller was already up, making coffee, the rich aroma filling the small kitchen. She glanced at Lena with a knowing smile. "You look tired, Lena, but alert. That's a good sign. A sign of a mind ready to process what happened." Lena rubbed her eyes. I keep thinking about last night. The devices, the briefcase, the people. What if some of them escaped? What if it wasn't over?" Frau Muller poured 2 mugs of steaming coffee. "You're right to think that way. Operations like that rarely end neatly. There are always strands left untied, loose ends that can unravel quickly if not monitored. But you, Lena, gave the authorities an edge. You acted when no one else could." Lena sipped the coffee, warmth spreading through her hands, her mind already returning to the unfolding situation. Despite the success, a nagging unease remained. Somewhere, in the shadowed corners of the city, remnants of the network were still moving, calculating, planning. And Lena knew that even a single mistake could undo everything. Frau Muller sat opposite her. "You should understand, Lena, that the network you disrupted isn't ordinary. These are highly organized individuals, motivated by power, greed, and secrets they will kill to protect. They've faced setbacks before, but setbacks only make them more cunning. You have to be prepared for retaliation." Lena nodded, her determination hardening. She was no longer a frightened street girl, she was part of a game far larger than herself. But that realization brought with it a new responsibility, a burden she had never carried before. The phone rang sharply, interrupting their quiet discussion. Frau Muller answered quickly. A few tense moments passed, then she handed the receiver to Lena. "It's Agent Beggar," Frau Muller said quietly. "He wants to speak with you directly." Lena's stomach twisted. She braced herself. "Hello? Lena, it's Beggar." "Listen carefully," the agent's calm, authoritative voice resonated through the phone. "Our preliminary analysis of the intercepted devices shows that not all the data was transferred to the authorities. There are fragments missing, likely copied onto backup storage hidden by the conspirators. We need you to recall everything you observed, any gestures, any details you noticed while following the man and the others. We need the patterns to anticipate where they might have gone next." Lena's mind raced, replaying every movement, every pause, every nervous glance she had observed. The man, the one who spoke German, he often checked his watch, even when he wasn't waiting for anyone. He repeated the same sequence of gestures, tapping the briefcase, adjusting his coat, then reviewing the papers. "I think it's a signal, some code to communicate with the others." Becker's voice was sharp with interest. "Exactly. That sequence likely indicates a hidden rendezvous point. We need you to map it mentally, every detail you remember, every street, every landmark." As Lena described the sequence, a map spread out across Frau Muller's dining table. Using her observations, Beggar and the team began plotting potential meeting locations, using Lena's instincts as a guide. Despite her youth, Lena's perception proved invaluable, revealing patterns that seasoned operatives might have overlooked. Hours later, a team was dispatched to investigate one of the likely locations, a warehouse near the industrial district of the city. Lena watched on the monitors as they approached, her heart hammering. Every second was crucial. Every misstep could mean the difference between capture and escape. Suddenly, a notification blinked on the screen, movement detected. Lena leaned closer, recognizing the figure immediately, the man who had first spoken German to her. He wasn't alone. 2 others followed, moving cautiously, aware that they might be observed. Lena's pulse quickened. She relayed their exact position and movements to Beggar, who coordinated the interception. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The team approached silently, surrounding the conspirators, and then, action. Officers moved with precision, apprehending the men before they could react. Lena exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. But as relief washed over her, a new layer of tension appeared. One of the conspirators, a young man with sharp eyes and a calculating demeanor, resisted, attempting to escape into the maze of alleys surrounding the warehouse. Lena's mind raced. She remembered a pattern he had exhibited the night before, small, almost imperceptible signals indicating escape routes. She pointed it out immediately to Beggar, who adjusted the officers' positions. The young man was apprehended moments later, and the team secured the location. Lena realized something critical: her observations weren't just helpful, they had been decisive. Her ability to notice subtle behavioral patterns, to anticipate actions, had prevented dangerous elements from slipping through the cracks. For the first time, she truly understood the value of her unique skills. Later, back at Frau Muller's apartment, Lena reflected on the day's events. She had played a key role in dismantling a dangerous network, guiding trained professionals with nothing but her intuition and careful observations. Yet the experience also weighed heavily. She knew that the individuals they had apprehended were only part of a larger operation. Other operatives, other contingencies, might still be active. The danger was far from over. As she sat in the quiet apartment, Lena realized the depth of her transformation. She had gone from a frightened girl on the streets to someone who could navigate danger, think strategically, and act decisively. But with that power came responsibility, and with responsibility came new challenges, challenges she had not yet faced. Frau Muller placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her thoughts. "Lena, what you've done is extraordinary. But you must understand, this world you've entered is complex. Courage alone isn't enough. You must continue to observe, to learn, to anticipate. The safety of many may depend on it." Lena nodded, absorbing the gravity of her mentor's words. She knew that her journey was far from over. The night's events had been only the beginning, a prelude to the ongoing struggle against the shadows that threatened the city. And Lena, small but resilient, was ready to face whatever came next. The sun rose higher, illuminating the streets below. To the casual observer, the city appeared ordinary, unaware of the intricate web of danger that had been unraveled in its midst. But Lena knew the truth: vigilance, courage, and a sharp mind could change the course of events in ways no one could predict. And she had already proven that, against all odds, even a young beggar girl could become a pivotal force in a fight far larger than herself. The city was drenched in twilight when Lena stepped back into the cool streets. The fading light casting long shadows across the alleyways. Her mind was a whirlwind of plans, contingencies, and the fragments of intelligence she had gathered. Every step she took reminded her of the night she had first heard the driver speak German, the moment that had set everything into motion. She had changed since then, but the dangers had not. Frau Muller had insisted that Lena take a moment to rest, but Lena could not. The network they had dismantled was only a piece of a far more complex puzzle. While the captured operatives had been secured, she knew other members of the organization were still active, still planning. The city's pulse, once ordinary, now seemed synchronized with her own heartbeat, every street corner a potential threat, every passerby a possible adversary. A secure phone buzzed in her pocket. She answered immediately. "Lena," Agent Becker's voice came through, calm but tinged with urgency. "We've traced communications originating from several secure locations tied to the network. One of them is scheduled to meet tonight near the old train yard at Eisenberg Station. Surveillance is limited, and we need someone with your skills to confirm the presence and movements of the individuals before we move in. Can you get there?" Lena swallowed hard. She knew the risks: the train yard was exposed, and even the smallest misstep could be catastrophic. But hesitation was not an option. "I'll go. Just tell me the team will be ready once I confirm." "Understood. Stay sharp, Lena." The journey to the train yard was tense. Lena moved through the city with deliberate care, keeping to shadows, noting every reflective surface, every sound, every subtle movement. She observed the rhythm of footsteps, the shifts in posture, the fleeting glances exchanged between strangers. Each detail was a thread in the larger tapestry of the operation she now led in her mind. When she arrived at the train yard, the scene unfolded with a quiet menace. Rusted tracks stretched into the darkness, abandoned freight cars forming jagged silhouettes. Lena crouched behind a low wall, scanning the area. In the dim light, 3 figures emerged from a freight car, the last conspirators she had yet to identify. Lena recognized them instantly: the young man she had followed in the warehouse, a woman with precise, deliberate movements, and a shadowy figure whose face was obscured. Her pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed at her to act, yet patience was crucial. She signaled through her secure phone to Beggar, relaying exact positions, body language, and any subtle cues, the tapping of the woman's fingers, the glances exchanged, the shifts in weight. Beggar's voice guided her through each observation. Minutes stretched as if suspended in time. Then the shadowy figure moved toward the back of a freight car, producing a small, metallic briefcase. Lena's eyes widened. That briefcase matched the one from the German-speaking driver, the one she had noticed days ago, which had initially drawn her into this dangerous web. She counted each step, each motion, memorizing every detail. Suddenly, the briefcase clicked open. Documents, data drives, and a small device lay within. Lena recognized the device immediately, similar to the one she had intercepted in the basement weeks earlier. Her mind raced. If that device reached its intended destination, the network could regain control, and all their previous efforts would unravel. Thinking fast, Lena moved closer, using the shadows to conceal her presence. Her small frame allowed her to slip silently between the rusted beams and crates. As she approached the conspirators, she noticed a loose panel near the edge of the tracks, just large enough for her to crouch behind while observing. From this vantage point, she could see the conspirators' faces, hear snippets of their conversation. "The signal's ready," the woman said, her tone clipped and professional. "Once we upload this, we regain access to all servers. There's no stopping us this time." Lena's stomach tightened. She knew she had to prevent the upload. But rushing in blindly could alert them, triggering violence or causing them to flee. She needed a plan, a precise, controlled action that leveraged her knowledge of their behavior. Suddenly, Lena remembered a small, portable device she had seen in the earlier operation. It was a disruptor, something that could interfere with electronic devices for a brief window. She had hidden one of the spare disruptors in her satchel weeks ago, anticipating potential complications. Retrieving it carefully, she set it on the ground, its blinking lights ready. Timing was everything. Lena waited until the conspirators began connecting the device to their network. At the precise moment, she activated the disruptor. A sharp, high-pitched buzz filled the air, and the device emitted a pulse of energy. Lena ducked instinctively as sparks flashed, wires sparking and screens flickering. Chaos erupted. The conspirators shouted in confusion, their movements jerky and panicked. The woman tried to salvage the device, but Lena had anticipated this. She dashed forward, seizing the briefcase before it could be reconnected. The young man lunged at her, but Lena was quicker, sidestepping and using her small frame to slip past him. At that moment, the sound of sirens cut through the night. Beggar and his team had moved in, guided by Lena's earlier signals. Officers surrounded the yard, guns drawn but measured, securing every exit. The conspirators, now disoriented and trapped, had no choice but to surrender. Lena held the briefcase tightly, heart pounding, every muscle tense with adrenaline and fear. One by one, the operatives were handcuffed and escorted away. Lena exhaled, relief mingling with lingering tension. The threat had been neutralized, the network dismantled, and the city safe, for now. Agent Beggar approached, nodding in approval. "Lena, that was extraordinary. You kept your wits under pressure, anticipated every move, and prevented a disaster. Your actions tonight, they saved countless lives." Lena smiled faintly, exhaustion weighing on her. I just did what I had to do. I remembered everything I saw, every detail, and I acted. Beggar placed a hand on her shoulder. Not everyone could have. You have a gift, a mind that sees patterns, a courage that refuses to yield. We're going to make sure it's put to good use. But first, let's get you home. Returning to the apartment, Lena was greeted by Frau Muller's relieved smile. I knew you could do it. But you must rest, Lena. You've carried too much on your own. As Lena settled into the warmth of the apartment, her mind reflected on the journey she had undertaken. From the first night she had overheard the driver speaking German, to following shadows through the city, to outmaneuvering dangerous conspirators, she had grown beyond the life she had known. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. The next morning, a new chapter awaited. Beggar and Frau Muller spoke of opportunities for Lena, training, education, a chance to refine her skills and apply them for the good of the city. Lena thought of the beggar girl she had once been, invisible and overlooked, and smiled. Now, she was a force to be reckoned with, a young woman whose instincts, intelligence, and bravery had changed the course of events. But Lena also knew this: the city would always have shadows. Challenges, threats, and conspiracies would arise again. What mattered was not avoiding danger, but facing it with clarity, courage, and the willingness to act. And Lena was ready. As she looked out the window at the waking city, sunlight spilling across the rooftops, Lena understood the truth her journey had revealed: even the smallest, seemingly powerless among us can shift the balance, can change the story, and can do the incredible. Her life had been transformed not by luck, but by her choices, by the courage to follow her instincts, by the willingness to see what others overlooked, and by the resolve to act when action was needed most. The city below thrummed with ordinary life, unaware of the silent battles waged in the shadows. But Lena had seen, had acted, and had triumphed. She knew that, no matter what came next, she would meet it with courage, intelligence, and heart. And somewhere in the streets she had once called home, other lives, other stories, were waiting, stories that might one day intersect with hers, guided by the same principles: observation, bravery, and the courage to do the incredible when no one else believed it possible.